Every tool can be used for good or can be used for evil, right? The tool itself is not necessarily the issue, is the use that you give to that tool, right? You can have a hammer, and a hammer is very useful to build houses and protect people, but you can kill somebody with a hammer too.
Jesus, welcome to 12 Geniuses.
Thank you very much.
The focus of this conversation is artificial intelligence and its use in the 2024 upcoming elections. We're going to talk about AI and how it's been used to influence elections in the past and how you're expecting it to be used for this upcoming election. But can you just give us a background on your experience using artificial intelligence or working with artificial intelligence?
When I started with artificial intelligence, it wasn't called artificial intelligence. I started in the 1990s. So in 1992, I finished my thesis to apply neural networks to speech recognition. And that is what we used to call, eventually it got renamed deep learning. And then eventually it became this, whole field of artificial intelligence. So most recently, obviously in the last decade or so, I've spent time in IBM, both from the deep learning and the what you would call now kind of almost the traditional AI, which is more used for forecasting and clustering and things like that, and the last 2-3 years with the use of foundation models and what we called generative AI. I was one of the founding members of the World Economic Forum. It was 40 of us. One of our priorities was, what is the ethical use of artificial intelligence? We all could see the potential that it would have, but like with any new technology or capability, there's always two sides to it. And that ethical framework now eventually became more of a priority, especially as AI has been consumerized by generative AI. So that was my involvement.
When you say two sides of AI, are you meaning the risks and the potential benefits to humanity, or what do you mean by that?
Exactly. I mean, every tool, if you actually look at human history and probably any other history as well, every tool can be used for good or can be used for evil, right? The tool itself is not necessarily the issue, is the use that you give to that tool, right? You can have a hammer, and a hammer is very useful to build houses and protect people, but you can kill somebody with a hammer too. So that's what I mean. It's like whenever you have a tool, a technology, a new capability, there is always, two sides. One is you've got to protect the bad use and the risks of actually having that available, and the other side is the benefits that a society or business you can obtain with it.
Yeah, what fascinates me about that conversation is just how democratized AI is and how rapidly it can spread in a way that I don't think any other technology has ever been used in human history. Would you agree with that assessment, or where is your stance on that?
Yeah, definitely the speed and the adoption. We have been saying this for 10 years, by the way. So with
Well,
the
you
internet.
have been, but the general population hasn't been.
Well, think about that. We probably said that with the browser in 1996 with Netscape. When Netscape came up, and it was like, oh wow. I mean, think about that. Now you can have the entire information of the world at your fingertips. How is the world ever going to go back? And it's true. It's like 10 years later, none of us could remember a world where internet wouldn't exist. And then we had smartphones and mobile phones, and then we said, well, listen, now you can actually access everything, whatever you are. How are we going to go back? So and then it came to Facebook at the time, is like, and that was like the fastest application. Oh, look at that. And now we are saying that with ChatGPT, it was indeed the fastest adopted application that we have today. So yeah, I think we keep conquering some of those tests, and but I think it has captured everybody's imagination, because there is a little bit of an element of magic to it. Is the fact that you have this like very simple to use application that just behaves as is. They can talk to you, they can do things that you before wouldn't think that technology is capable. I think that mystique, together with the accessibility, as you said, that like everybody can can just use it on their cell phone, has made it a incredibly fast technology to adopt.
Can you share your definitions for fake news, deep fakes, and misinformation? And maybe there's overlap between those definitions, but how do you define those terms?
I think I define them as intentional use of untrue information with the intention to mislead. And the reason why I say that is you could actually create a clone of myself dancing, and you can do that for fun. And I wouldn't call that misinformation. Or you could create kind of like a deep clone of me actually doing something evil and put it on TV with the intention of getting me in jail. And one of those is misinformation, and the other one is like fun use of the same technology, right? So I think I would, in my view, I would put the intent to misinform or mislead. So intention to actually persuade someone with knowingly wrong information is what kind of like would make something like that fake news or deep fakes or misinformation.
What is the extent of the problem with fake news and misinformation in elections? And we can talk historically.
You're basically manipulating at scale a population based on potentially untrue information in order to change the outcome of the democratic process. Now, that definition by itself, I don't think is new, because there has been probably, since elections have existed, there have probably been negative ads. And I think what the difference now is the scale of the tool with which you can do that, the personalization level, the targeting level, and therefore the effectiveness. Maybe with a wide ad where you say things that you're kind of like stretching the truth that might have happened and you don't get caught on that, maybe you're 1 to 3% effective. But now you have a tooling with AI that can be highly credible, highly targeted, and therefore highly effective, and is very hard to ever undo its effect. With this new tool, the combination of the fact that you can generate highly credible, misleading content and you can distribute it highly effectively to the target population in a personalized manner that makes it highly effective is really hard to undo once you have done that. So I think is the potency, if you want, of the level at which you can misinform that creates that problem with the use of deepfakes, fake news, highly personalized misinformation with the intention of interfering with the democratic process. I think that's the problem.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is we're using really, really advanced technologies, but we're tapping into something that's very primal, which is belief. And we know belief is more powerful than actual facts. It's very difficult to untangle our beliefs in the presence of facts. So I find those two things to be very, very interesting.
The biggest risk, in my view, of the technology is it starts eroding the basic levels of trust upon which we build society. The fact that you can own land is because there is a trust system that ultimately determines, do you or do you not own this land? The fact that you have truth in lending, right? When a bank give you money or you give money to a bank, there is an insurance system that is like, don't worry, we guarantee that if you need your money back up to $100,000 in the United States, the government is going to guarantee that you can get your money back. So there is truth in lending. And upon those trust systems, we build each subsequent layer of society, right? So we build the education system, we build all of the systems upon which we evolve society. I think the biggest challenge of this technology is that goes to the heart of some of those systems in such a credible way that then you go to court, and now if you show a jury a video that sees you or I killing somebody, then it's like, how do you know that's not true? It's like the video is like, you're there in the video. I've seen it with my eyes. So a lot of the basic things of like, okay, you can't tell me that didn't happen. I've seen it with my eyes. is so credible that whether it's truth or false, then you can no longer believe it. That I think is the biggest risk of the misuse of AI technology is the erosion or is the basic trust layers of society, and with that, kind of like you could crumble, right? You could
Yeah. Yeah.
crumble. You could crumble. I mean, you mentioned elections, so you could crumble the democratic system if you embed enough doubt that nobody ever believes what the between quotes truth is, because there is no way to actually determine what is truth. If somebody's like, oh, I've seen it with my own eyes, they were all fake ballots, it's like, well, I can prove to you that it's not. It's like, well, it doesn't matter what you prove to me, I've seen it with my own eyes. So it's, I think that's the biggest danger I see.
No doubt about it in my mind as well. And so, my question to you as a solution man, you've been responsible for creating these solutions. How do we restore this trust?
We have focused mostly on what we call business to business solutions, right? So I'm less of an expert on social media or the application of AI for social media and these areas. So I can give you answers as an observer, if you want, or an educated observer of the fact that I understand the technology. But one of some of the choices that we do in the technology that I operate is this trust ledger, and the ethical use of the technology and the governance of this technology becomes very important. The companies that use AI technology need to be responsible for how that technology is used. And that means they need to understand, one is the intent to which they're using it. Are they intending to create a harm or are intending to help? I think that intent has to be clearly established. The second thing is, we encourage, every company that we engage with, we encourage for them to actually maintain a library, a list of all the places in which you're using AI, right? It is very difficult to govern the use of AI if you don't have a list. So start with a list. Where are you using AI? And then start asking these questions. We call them a fact sheet, which is, okay, so if we're using AI, do you actually understand what data was used to train that AI, right? Is it public? Was the IP, the intellectual property used to train some of these algorithms, did you actually have the right to use that or not? Because otherwise you could be liable for the fact that you're using somebody else intellectual property on that. So those elements of it are valid. So I think that would start, if you want, from the very beginning of the application, start governing and preventing a lot of the ill use, because you already know the intent, you already know the lineage of the data, and therefore you can better govern how is it going to be used. I think on the other side of the equation, on the receiving side or on the consumer side, a lot of the same solutions that we have been exploring for cybersecurity, I think they're helpful in this environment. So when you get a phishing email, somebody saying, oh, your order was just rejected, click here and give me your password. I think we are training more and more and more both consumers and people to say, yeah, you shouldn't click there. We're doing both technology, so we're building more and more technology to detect those patterns and say, hey, careful, this doesn't seem like an email that is legit, right? So there's a lot of technology going into kind of flagging content and saying, yeah, this content may be suspicious. But then the other side is really a great deal of education to say, in the same way, you need to be careful what email you clicked on, and kind of like you shouldn't give anybody in the internet that you don't know your password. I think we have to grow on the education of this healthy skepticism to say, just because you watch a video that says something, you shouldn't necessarily blindly believe it. And I think a healthy habit to just look at counterpoints, look at the point, look at the counterpoint. If you see something that looks odd, then try to find another either confirming or contrarian point. So a lot of it has to be education. As much as we would like a great tool that is just going to flag it for you, I think human agency should still be retained, and therefore education is very important.
You talked about the technologies that are being used to amplify fake news. And these would be social media companies, so we don't have to talk about specifically which ones, but how do we hold these companies accountable through regulation or through other sorts of governance?
We have a challenge on that on social media, and the challenge was born of the fact of, you know, what they say, every road has two ditches. If we would, maybe at the very beginning of the growth of social media, we would hold every internet property to do that, then everybody would get sued, and then the internet would never go anywhere, because of we're such a litigious company, a litigious society, that we love to figure out an angle to do that. So you've got ditches on both roads. Not everybody should be sued for everything, but on the other side, if you're actually intentionally misinforming and causing harm, you should be held accountable to that. I think that is the dilemma, that, I think the technology is basically going a lot faster than our legislation, and I think that the legislation has to catch up. I think I think we need to take a risk based approach to these things. As I mentioned, I don't think we necessarily should regulate or legislate hammers, because somebody could hit you in the head with them and kill you. I think we should regulate or legislate the act of somebody hitting you in the head with a hammer, but we should allow people to use hammers to build houses.
In which ways can social media companies be incented to eliminate damaging fake news?
I think at some point there's going to be some form of accountability for it, right? So if there is a damage done, then how do you actually hold them accountable for it? So I think there's going to be evolution towards some of that level, without encroaching the point where, everybody will sue them for everything, and therefore they can't really provide the service that actually is helping a lot of people do the good. Um, I think the other aspect of the solution is the fact that, human attention is part of the issue. So we we don't report on 10,000 landings of planes every day, but we all pay attention to the one crash, and that's just human nature. And that human nature translates to the business model for media, which is eyeballs and clicks, and the unfortunate situation that we all provide more eyeballs and clicks when there is blood and when there is drama than when is good news. I haven't figured out that one, because that one is really hard to, what are you going to do? Create a business model that doesn't depend on the clicks? Well, then, I mean, media companies already have enough problem as it is making money and staying alive. So that I don't really know how to solve for that one. So if anybody has any ideas, I'm willing to listen to it. But that's part of the issue. Is part of the issue is both the political system and the media system. It is designed to be polarized. It is not designed to be unified.
Yes. So I do think you identified the solution, and that is awareness, self-awareness. So, for example, do you prefer to be at peace or outraged? Just curious.
I prefer to be at peace.
At peace, I think most people do, but yet we're drawn to things that outrage us, right? And once I recognized that, I realized, no, I'm done with cable news. No, I'm done with political satire, even if it's funny, even if it makes me laugh, if it's going to outrage me. But it took that self-awareness to say, oh, this is putting me in the wrong kind of mood, so I'm done with it. But that's a lot. There's 8 billion people. There's 330 million in the United States. That's a lot of self-awareness that we need to start spreading.
Yeah, I mean, you're giving me some ideas in the middle of this conversation, which is, evolution made us, like, our species, Homo sapiens. We conquered the tree of evolution because of our social skills,
Mm.
and because we could organized, and we had this affinity to be together as opposed to be lone
Leopards.
lone, exactly,
Yeah.
just being alone. We really, and that represented a evolutionary advantage to do that. Part of that advantage, I mean, I'm probably going to oversimplify, but we actually have a system um, called mirror neurons in our brain, which is like most of our senses are based on physical properties, like the sound waves, we detect them. The molecules in the air, we can smell them. The light, we can see it. But there is no physical property to an emotion. There is no actual mean to propagate an emotion. So evolution, between quotes, invented for us this system of mirror neurons, which is we have over 100 muscles in our face, and it's a flagging system that when you're with another human being, you have these neurons that will recreate the emotional state of the person in front of you. So when you see somebody crying, you cry. But there is no physical mean, there is no molecules, there is no waves that are communicating that emotion. You're recreating it based on these mirror neurons. I think part of the problem that you said is we don't feel catastrophe. Like when catastrophe is really close to us, even though it's news, to your point, it really hurts. You prefer to be at peace. You don't want to be at war. You prefer to be, but the moment that you're watching that on a TV and there is no mirror neurons, there is no kind of like you're not feeling the horror or the pain or the drama, then you're curious, but you don't have consequences. Maybe part of it is we need to develop a higher range of empathy amplification, if you want, a mechanism through which, we immerse ourselves more to both understand the other viewpoint, but also kind of a little bit suffer. And that's a little bit what's happening with climate change, if you think right now. This last year, 2023, in my view, is the first time that society at large felt climate change.
Hmm.
Before, intellectually, we were talking about 2 degrees or 1.5 degrees or the Paris Accord, but you don't feel anything about that. But when you start seeing hurricanes develop in 24 hours, when you start seeing record hit that destroys your, livelihood, or, your house is underwater, now you're feeling it. Now it's becoming, oh, I don't want that. Maybe we need more mechanisms to amplify empathy as a society.
Can you leave us with some final advice for how voters can stay informed while avoiding fake news and misinformation?
Yeah, I mean, I think go back to trusted sources. So sources that are vetted. I think develop the habit of always trying to look both at the arguments that support your beliefs and the arguments that counter your belief, and not be offended by it. I think it's a great habit that my friend Daniel Lubetsky helped me develop, which is this idea of like, well, just take a week and whichever news, TV channel you watch, then take the other side and watch it for a week. And it's a really hard thing to do, by the way, because the first like 10 minutes, I mean, your blood is boiling, and then you have to take a deep breath. But then you kind of like start developing this mechanism, whether you agree or disagree, then you at least understand that another person like you that would be listening to this for a week would probably have certain set of beliefs. So you take out um, you're able to understand that good people can have bad opinions or different opinions than yours. That doesn't make them bad people necessarily. It just they're subject to a different environment, a different set of messages, a different set of beliefs, that if you spend enough time with those, they become reasonable. You may disagree with them, they may not be true in your opinion, But you can then understand that for those people, when they actually do the same thing and flip, they probably have a similar view of your own beliefs. And I think that becomes a really great mechanism to um, learn to develop this both sense of empathy and also skepticism, that not everything that is in your belief side may necessarily be 100% correct, and not everything that is in the belief system of the other side is 100% incorrect. And that helps create, still form your own opinion, but this idea of, as a habit, always figure out point and counterpoint has been really helpful for me.
Okay, next question is, what fills you with a sense of optimism? Because you're an optimist, clearly.
I bet on human ingenuity. Um, I think when you're designing something, you are obligated to be an optimist because you tend to design what you believe. Therefore, unless you can be an optimist, you can't really design great solutions. So, but I think over and over and over again, human ingenuity um, has conquered the most difficult challenges through the last 3,000 years history, at any level. And at the time, for a period of time, it may look impossible. It may look unachievable, but and yet we figured out how to find a way. So if you look at the challenges of our time, climate change, um, the polarization of politics around the world, and I think 2024 is the year to stress test democracy in the planet. Um, if you look at AI that we just talked about, and the potential erosion of the trust foundation of our society, so pretty big challenges. But I think human ingenuity, over and over and over again, we've just come up with that spark, that new idea, that new way of doing things. That is what gives me optimism. But optimism is not a given. Optimism, it has to be led and it has to be conquered. So I still think that we have to have a society. I think we have to be accountable to steer a lot of these new possibilities, new tools, new ways of doing things in a way that is balanced and is sustainable. Um, but as a designer of that future, I think I have to be optimistic, and I have to design solutions that leverage human ingenuity to a positive outcome. So,
Jesus, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I could talk to you for hours. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being a genius.
of course, anytime.